but not feeling too clever if you're stuck with the cloud and the outbreaks of rain. The changeable theme continues into the weekend.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Well, tonight on Farage, we discuss, has Truss gone soft on Europe as she appears to have signed us up to EU military cooperation? We ask, would British officers on French beaches stop the huge flow of people across the English Channel? We'll ask, why have wind energy companies been paid such ridiculous sums for producing electricity? We'll debate that and much more. We'll even ask, did Pfizer tell us the truth about the vaccine? And then joining me for Talking Pints, Paul Staines, the mastermind behind the website Guido Fawkes. So a busy hour coming up. But before all of that, let's get the news headlines.
Thank you, Nigel. Good evening to you. The Prime Minister says she's absolutely sticking to her pledge not to cut public spending as she continues to defend her government's economic plan. Liz Truss fended off questions from the Labour leader at her first PMQs since the Chancellor unveiled his mini-budget. Sir Keir Starmer labelled Kwasi Kwarteng's plans madness and said it had sent the economy into turmoil. He called on the government to reverse what he called the kamikaze budget. Well, the Bank of England has confirmed its emergency bond buying scheme will close this Friday. Pension funds will need to find billions of pounds before the end of the week to make sure they can withstand market turmoil. The bank had been forced to intervene amid the continuing fallout over the Chancellor's mini-budget. Business Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg says the Bank of England can effectively deal with inflation. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner has expressed his frustration at environmental campaigners who have been demonstrating in London in recent days. In a post on social media, Mark Rowley said more than 200 officers are involved in protests held in the capital every day. He wrote there'd been 338 arrests in the last 11 days. Earlier today, Insulate Britain and Just Stop Oil staged protests outside Parliament and Downing Street. Detectives looking for a woman who went missing 3 years ago have launched a murder inquiry after finding human remains. 19-year-old Leah Croucher was last seen on CCTV walking to work in Milton Keynes in February 2019. Thames Valley Police are searching a property where items belonging to her, including a rucksack, have been found following a tip-off from the public. It says specialist teams will remain at the property for a significant period of time. In Ukraine, the brother of the mayor of Kyiv says Russia's president is deliberately targeting civilians. This Monday, several areas of Ukraine, including the capital, Kyiv, were targeted by Russian airstrikes, leaving at least 26 people dead and dozens more injured. Ukrainian former heavyweight boxing champion Vladimir Klitschko told GB News President Putin's targeting civilian infrastructure to make up for his military losses on the battlefield.
Russia, Putin in this case, is the leader of the country, trying to put us all on the knee so we freeze, we have no food, and try to dictate what we actually want to do and how we're supposed to live. And that's the strategy and tactic of Russia in this case, because on the front line, they don't have success.
That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time to go back to Farage.
Good evening. Well, I know there's all sorts of discussion about the chaos within the Conservative Party and a 1922 committee that's just finished in, well, let's say less than total unity. Debates, of course, about the economy and the behaviour of the Governor of the Bank of England. God knows why he was ever appointed in the first place. But tonight, I want to talk about something that is getting almost no news coverage at all. And it's this. Liz Truss went off happily to Monsieur Macron's new creation, the European political community. Well, what on earth could be wrong with that? It sounds a bit like the EEC, doesn't it, all those years ago? Don't worry your poor little heads, it'll just be about trade. So I watched Truss going off there and thought, I wonder what's going on here. Then we discover she signed us up. Yes, we are going to be part of an EU-inspired military arrangement. We also discover that when it comes to Northern Ireland, it's the intention of the Prime Minister that the European Court of Justice should continue to have a say. I'm getting worried about this direction of travel. I'm asking you tonight to tell me what you think. Has Truss gone soft on Europe? Let me know your thoughts, Farage at gbnews.uk. Now, back in 2014, Nick Clegg was Deputy Prime Minister and challenged me to a series of head-to-head public debates. And this is what happened in one of those debates when I raised the subject of a European army. Listen in.
The whole point of this debate is 40 years on. 40 years ago, it was a common market. Now it's a European Union that wants an air force, an army, a navy, and wants to militarily intervene.
This is a dangerous fantasy. The idea that there's going to be a European Air Force, a European army, it is simply not true. The problem with people like Nigel Farage is they swing at windmills. They see conspiracies everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if Nigel Farage soon tells us that the moon landing was a fake, that Barack Obama isn't American, that Elvis isn't dead.
So there we are. I was as likely to be right as to deny the fact the moon landings had happened. I was a dangerous conspiracy theorist, according to our then Deputy Prime Minister, who, of course, saw the demise of his own party shortly afterwards. And in my view, folks, don't be long on Facebook shares, because that's where he is now. But we did sign up, and this is regrettable, in my opinion, or concerning at least. Liz Truss, at this European political community, did sign us up to a military deal on something that is called PESCO. I know you've never, ever heard of it, but it might just really matter. Yes, it's permanent, structured cooperation. And what is PESCO? Well, let me quote Joseph Borrell, who is the High Representative for the European Union on Foreign Affairs. This is what it actually is. PESCO is a decisive contribution for the development of Europe's capacity to act autonomously. It is key for the development of strong and integrated defence capabilities available to the European Union, which will allow us to react effectively to the most demanding circumstances. Now, they don't call it a European army, but if you think about the statement I've just read out to you, frankly, what's the difference? And given that NATO is based in Brussels and that NATO has existed for over 70 years, isn't it rather worrying that a parallel military structure is being created? Well, Sir Gerald Howarth, former Minister for International Security Strategy, and Gerald, you have been watching all of this like a hawk for the last couple of decades. Should we be concerned that it appears Liz Truss has signed us up to this?
Well, I think, Nigel, we need to be clear as to exactly what has been signed up to, because all my inquiries today have failed to produce any evidence as to what it is we have actually signed up to. But you were right in that clip to draw attention to the fact that the leaders of the European project have always intended to create a European army, or what they call an EU defence identity, because, of course, along with the anthem and the parliament and the president, you have to have an army. And that is what they were intent upon doing. And when we were in government, when I was in the Ministry of Defence 10 years ago, William Hague and I managed to prevent the EU from setting up an EU command and control centre to deal with the piracy operations off the coast of East Africa, which is an operation the EU was undertaking whilst NATO undertook Operation Ocean Shield. We persuaded the EU that it was ridiculous there having an operational command and control centre. Why not base it at Northwood, where the Royal Navy was operating from? And we were successful. But of course, everyone was intended to do this. 25 EU members signed up to this permanent structured cooperation in 2017. 5 of them were actually neutral, which of course demonstrates the farcical nature of the whole thing. But surely, in the past 8 months, all of us have seen that the real power, military power in Europe, must be through NATO. That is what is delivering to the Ukrainians at the moment. It is all NATO. Anything like this which threatens to undermine NATO...
Well, this is my point, Jerry. If you set up, and whether it's called a command and control centre, or whether, as Joseph Borrell says, these are military capabilities available to the European Union, you are talking about 2 parallel military structures existing within the city of Brussels. It doesn't work, does it?
I don't think so, no. And I think that, of course, it sends a very unclear message to those against whom we are ranged, that we are divided, that we are not of one mind. And I thought what came out of the meeting, what has come out of successive meetings in the last few months, maybe not initially, but certainly in the last few months, is that NATO, and it's fair to say the European Union, but all European countries, apart from perhaps Turkey, which is ambivalent, have been absolutely united in supporting Ukraine and dealing with Putin. But in the political declaration which accompanied the agreement which Boris Johnson, as Prime Minister, signed in 2019, December 2019, in that political declaration there is mention of PESCO, but it is only mentioned in terms of possibly exceptional cases where we might join. And Ben Wallace, Secretary of State for Defence, said in 2020 that he was very concerned about it and had no plans that we would join.
Do you understand why I might be suspicious of Conservative politicians saying, don't worry your poor little heads, it's all going to be OK? Because we've been down this route already with the EEC morphing into the EC and then the EU. I mean, it looks like she signed up to this at Macron's big get-together. You can't find out, despite your influence, any significant details of what has been agreed to. I would put it to you that surely the position of a Prime Minister of Brexit Britain would have been to say to that meeting of the European political community, there are no circumstances in which we would join this. Surely you've all learned that NATO is the right vehicle. And my concern is she didn't do that.
We don't know what she did, Nigel. That is the problem. Whether she signed up to an agreement under the terms of PESCO...
No, hang on, be fair. What we do know is if she ruled it out of court, it would have been on the front page of the Financial Times the next morning as a huge row that took place at that meeting. Why didn't she just rule? I mean, would you rule it out?
I wouldn't rule out being engaged on a specific project. I had a word with the current chairman of the ERG, of which, of course, I was a member, Marc Francois, a former Minister of the Armed Forces. Marc told me today that he thinks that it might be something to do with the movement of heavy armour across Europe, where if we were to move our tanks in support of whatever, we might have to have an agreement. Now, that sort of practical arrangement, I don't think that any of us are going to gainsay. There is no value in that. There is value in practical cooperation. What is of concern is that under PESCO, basically, under their rules, third-party nations who are part of who are invited to come in on a PESCO operation have no control over the operation, they have no say, and they have to sign up to EU values and to undertake not to contravene EU defence and security interests. We do not know what the Prime Minister has signed up to. We do need to know. I did text one of our defence ministers, but unfortunately I haven't yet had a reply.
Well, if you get the right answer, Gerald, come back on the programme.
I'll come back and let you know,
Thank
Nigel.
you, please.
But you're right to raise it, and it is important.
Yes.
In the interests of the nation, which voted to leave the European Union.
Absolutely.
We do not want to find ourselves gradually creeping back in and undermining a Brexit.
And that is absolutely my concern, Gerald Howard. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And sticking on that theme, you know, why on earth did Liz Truss think it was a good idea to go along to a meeting of something called a European political community? I mean, they could have called it any other name. It was the use of the word political that began to raise the hairs on the back of my neck. Well, joining me is property investment magnate and former colleague of mine as a Brexit Party MEP, Ben Habib. Ben, you know, firstly, big picture, you and I campaigned for us to leave the European Union, but to stay friendly with Europe.
Yeah.
So on the face of it, going to a meeting with other European leaders, on the face of it, might be the right thing to do. I just get a bit suspicious when I see a name like European political community.
Absolutely. It's got two words in there which really, ought to raise alarm bells, European and political together. And there is already a talking shop for nations to get together.
Council of Europe.
The Council of Europe, exactly. And there was no need to set this up.
Yeah.
So why Liz Truss went into it does beg a few questions. I want to just clarify some of the things that Gerald was saying. We do know what the government has signed us up to, by the way. It is PESCO military mobility, and they've done it under the guise of having to support Ukraine. But PESCO military mobility is a PESCO project. It's a defined term.
This is the Marc Francois comment about being able to move vehicles,
But it's much more sinister than that, Nigel. And we need to debunk it, because the PESCO project, any PESCO project, requires a participant country to sign up to all the things Sir Gerald was warning us about. So we're not allowed to challenge their defence decisions, their foreign policy decisions.
Yeah.
We have to march towards interoperability, which means that our systems and technical armaments and so on need to be integrated with Europe. And we have signed up to this.
What amazes me, Ben, is there's no debate about this. There is no debate about this, and that's why we're doing it tonight on this programme. Now, look, overnight, you wrote a piece. You wrote a piece in a very prominent Belfast newspaper about the Northern Ireland Protocol. I see Lord Frost, our former chief negotiator with the European Union for our withdrawal, has been raising alarm bells. You know, on the one hand, Liz Truss was talking very tough about, Article 16, etc., what we may or may not do. Next thing we hear, it's all lovey-dovey with Brussels. There's going to be a great compromise struck over Northern Ireland, senior anti-Brexit EU figures saying it's all going to be fine. Where actually are we with Northern Ireland, and why does it matter?
OK, well, let me just address your second question first. Why does it matter? When we voted in 2016 for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union, we voted for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. Northern Ireland has been left behind. It is subject to foreign laws made by a foreign parliament, enforced by a foreign court. It is the equivalent of taxation without representation. It's actually an abuse of the human rights of 1.8 million British citizens.
So it's part of our country, and it's been effectively cast out.
Nigel, it's classed as a foreign country under UK trade rules. That's how it's defined, as a foreign country.
OK. And now, again, you see, it's interesting because, again, there's very little discussion in national media in this country about Northern Ireland. We almost try. I think the BBC treat it as if it is already a foreign country.
Well, the BBC, the Labour Party, and large swathes of the Tory party are actually pro-nationalism. And you look at the debate that we've had in the Lords in the last couple of days. What Lord Cormack and other people like him, Lord Clark, wish to do is to neuter the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, which was Liz Truss's measure to deal with the protocol, take it out of the legislative process for 6 months, giving the EU carte blanche to dictate their terms to us. Now, you and I have seen this before, when they took no deal off the table back in 2019. That's what they're trying to do again with the protocol.
So where do you think we are? Do you think the compromise deal that Truss will strike is that the European Court of Justice will continue to have say?
There is no such thing as compromise with the EU. Šefčovič, the Vice President of the Commission who's responsible for negotiating with us, has a mandate which has not shifted one bit over the last 3 years. He will not compromise. If a deal is struck, Nigel, it'll be the British government capitulating to EU demands. Make no mistake, they may sell it in any other way. That is what is going to happen. And I just want to draw a contrast. In 1982, we were prepared to mobilise our army, our navy, our air force, to protect 3,000 people, 10,000 sheep, 10,000 miles away, which was a British protectorate. Wind the clock forward to 2022, we're not prepared to protect 1.8 million British citizens, part of the United Kingdom. In fact, without them, we are not the United Kingdom, we are Great Britain. And they are right next door to us. And this is all happening without a single shot being fired. Why does it matter? Because it would absolutely undermine everything the United Kingdom has ever stood for and all the rights of British citizens in the Union. If we give in to this, we will be taken for a ride in perpetuity. We will... People... In the Lords the other day, they're talking about our international standing will be damaged. What do you think happens to our international standing if we as a country...
If we're not a proper United Kingdom, Ben have been said with an extraordinary passion, and I hope at home you understand Northern Ireland is fully part of the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, under our Brexit deal, it's in a very, very bad place. In a moment, Suella Braverman wants to give the French another £50 million and put British police on French beaches. Would that solve the problem?
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB Newsday with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB Newsday and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
So, has Truss gone soft on Europe? Some of your responses coming in. Sean says, migrant crossings, where's the preemptive action? Doesn't anyone in the UK government really care about this? Or is it all just election campaign talk? Well, we had an awful lot of promises on the English channel, and we'll come back to that in more depth in just a moment. John says, we need to get out of Europe's clutches and laws, stop illegal immigration, create our own energy, good Lord, what an idea that is, and stop giving out handouts all the time. John, you sound like a Brexiteer. Ryan says, I'm not sure she had a particularly strong position to start with? Well, Ryan, she was, of course, a Remainer, as was Theresa May. Elaine says we must not sign up to anything that undermines our sovereignty and where we do not have a veto. Well, I don't disagree, Elaine, with any of that. Now, interestingly, one thing we have stayed part of is the European Convention on Human Rights. And because of that, the European Court of Human Rights, and of course you remember, not long ago, a judge, an unnamed judge, probably somebody without any legal training, stopped that flight going to Rwanda. But the Home Secretary has got a new, brilliant, genius proposal, and that is we give the French another £50 million. And they allow us to put British bobbies, maybe even British soldiers, though I doubt that, on French beaches, and that'll solve the whole thing. Well, I said to you over the last couple of days, I genuinely think giving money to the French to stop people crossing the Channel is a total and utter waste of money. We're pouring it down the drain. Why? Well, I showed you on Monday that TikTok video, didn't I? 8th of October, 50 young men apprehended by the gendarmes in sand dunes. 9th of October, they're back with a different inflatable dinghy, and they come across the Channel to Dover. I don't think it's worth a light. Maybe we should give the French some praise, because overnight they stopped 400 people crossing just west of Boulogne. So well done to the French. You stopped 400 people coming. However, across the rest of the Channel today, haven't got the official figure yet, it'll be between another 700 and 800. We're well through 37,000 people now as hotels fill up right across the United Kingdom, including, as we saw, the intention to use Camelot Castle in North Cornwall. Well, I'm joined by Claire Purcell, former government special advisor. You worked in the Home Office, Claire. You are a committed Conservative. You know what? Even without the economy, this issue alone is going to cost you a lot the next election, isn't it?
It is, and it's an issue that hasn't been taken seriously for a number of years. And it's all very well for the new Home Secretary to say she is going to demand British boots on French beaches. But the previous Home Secretary also made that request of President Macron. It didn't get very far. We ended up sending more money to France. And here we are in the same position. So I'm not convinced that anybody's actually taking this seriously.
Well, they sound serious. I mean, Priti Patel, Boris Johnson, these big speeches at Lyd Airport, how we're going to sort the whole thing out. And the amazing thing is, the Conservative supporting press, the next day it's all over the front pages. They believe every word they're told. We get let down again and again and again. But there is one, perhaps, interesting new angle on this. And it is that Suella Braverman, who I think actually, is the most genuine of Brexiteers in that cabinet. Yeah. There's no question she believes in this. Now, she dared to speak the unspeakable when she said before conference that she thought we might need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Reportedly, number 10, absolutely furious with her. My question to you, as an active Conservative and a Conservative representative, is, has that got legs? Within the Conservative Party, has leaving ECHR got legs, or is Suella, frankly, just out on a limb?
I have a nasty feeling she's out on a limb. This will appeal to part of the party, but I think the major problem that we have is all of these things have been promised before. And as we've seen, Suella Braverman makes these statements and then it's all backtracked. So unfortunately, I think that we're never going to see things like that, those kind of actions, which quite a lot of people will support and will do the country a bundle of good, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But I think we're going to see that backtrack. Liz Truss wants to be popular, despite what she says. And I think this one is too difficult. She thinks that she'll have difficulty.
It's almost like leaving the EU was 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that was too difficult to contemplate for the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
This, which would complete Brexit, you're saying is still too difficult.
Yeah, it is, because
So are you resigned to election defeat next time round?
Well, I think the party looks like it is. If we believe anything that we hear from the 1922 committee tonight, people came out of there with their heads hanging in shame, going in to prepare to be in opposition. The party has lost its fight. It feels like it's lost its way. And immigration is one of those issues which is a really difficult conversation. Nobody wants to have it, and nobody dares to speak about it. And that's what's really depressing.
Well, do you know what? If that's the way it stays, you jolly well deserve to lose, in my opinion. I have to say, Claire, thanks for your honesty. Now let's have a look at what happened today. I'm going to show you some clips today of what happened on Kent's beaches. First, we're going to see what the scenes in Dover this morning as the first of the perhaps nearly 800 people that are going to come into Dover today. That's non-controversial. You've seen that again and again. But now have a look at what happened on the shingle at Dungeness earlier on today. This is truly extraordinary. And I've no idea why we're allowing this to happen. Right, can you see, standing just to the left of the picture, there's a woman there. She represents an organisation called Care for Calais. And as the migrants come off the RNLI boat, she's handing them packages. She's handing them parcels. That's before immigration services have spoken to them. That's before the police have intervened. I've no idea what she's giving them. Is it money? Is it a sugar bar? Is it drugs? I've absolutely no idea. But I have to raise a very serious question. Whether this Care for Calais organisation are in some way actually, potentially aiding and abetting this activity. There's something very, very wrong. Now, they say, of course, that their activities both over in Calais, Dunkirk and here in Kent are helping poor, desperate migrants. I have my suspicions they're rather more deeply involved than that, but I won't go further because I'm bored with the lawsuits. Now, let's get back to the big debate, energy. And, you know, we have been pushing this as a programme month after month after month. We're worried about energy supply. We discussed that last night. But we're also worried about energy price. And there is something of a racket that I think's been going on in terms of money that's been paid to wind farm companies for their production of electricity. And now we're told that a tax will be brought in to those wind and solar companies who've been paid very, very high prices, excessive prices for their electricity. We're going to find out why over the course of the next few minutes and whether we think this tax makes sense. I'm generally, as you know, not for windfall taxes, but in this case, I think consumers might just have been ripped off. Well, Steve Brown is CEO of Orcadian Energy and a man who spent decades involved with oil and gas development in the North Sea. I want to begin on this supply point before I get to price. You see, there was a time when companies were really encouraged to invest in the North Sea. There were positive noises coming out of London, positive noises when Alex Salmond was around, coming out of Edinburgh, and, you know, come to the North Sea, invest, get engaged, get involved. And that was often during a period when prices were quite a lot lower than they are today. We now have, from a production point of view, maybe not consumer, but production point of view, we've got very good prices. And Steve, do I see that we're sort of really rather saying to big companies such as the Cambo development, don't come here, go somewhere else?
Well, the North Sea has an awful lot of remaining potential. And we need to see more investment in the North Sea, not less. Now the government's saying, come and invest. But the past year or two, especially in the run-up to COP26, there was a sense that people didn't want more investment in oil and gas. And I think the government's actually been encouraging financial institutions to adopt climate change objectives and to not invest in oil and gas. So we have a project in the North Sea. We have a 80 million barrel discovery. We've got the plans ready to develop it. And what we need now is investment to move that project forward. And the city's not stepping up to the plate.
But then why would I invest in a Scottish project if I thought within a couple of years Scotland might have left the United Kingdom with a SNP government in Edinburgh that is now anti the oil industry?
Well, they're very pro-renewables, and that's not a bad thing.
We'll come to that. We'll come to that.
You know, they want to see a transition. And like I say, I don't think that's a bad thing. But it has to be a secure transition.
So
it has to be done.
But the investment money for your project, potentially very big project, that money's not coming because people aren't sure of the message.
I think the message is changing, and actually I see a shift in attitudes, but frankly, it's not happening fast enough. We need to see investment coming in from pension funds, institutions, and we've gone to people like Aviva and Legal in General, and they say we're not doing oil and gas anymore. And that's actually not good enough.
No. Well, they're too busy buying gilts, of course, which they're going to have to sell before Friday if you listen to the Governor of the Bank of England, but it's a separate debate.
That's a separate point.
Now, here's the thing. These particularly, solar's small, but these wind energy producing companies have been paid prices for their electricity generally based on the price of gas.
Absolutely.
They have been making excessive profits, and the people sitting at home watching this or listening in their cars have been ripped off, haven't they?
Well, so electricity is priced at the margin, and at the margin, the price is set by gas. So you're absolutely right about that. And all these renewable investments have been made on the back of government support. So the government's put in a floor on the price. And actually, from what I've read about this new proposal, what they're planning to do is put a ceiling on the price as well. And maybe that's fair enough. In the oil and gas sector, oil prices go up and down, and, if you're an oil company, you just have to put
and you
up
live with that. And your shareholders live with that. And I get that. But in the case of wind energy, we've lumped huge amounts onto people's electricity bills for the last 20 years to shovel into an industry that has now ripped us off in return by an electricity price for wind production based on gas, which has gone through the roof. It isn't very fair, is it?
That's probably a good way to put it. It's not really fair.
Well, I tell you what, if somebody from the energy industry says that to me, I must be on the right track.
I think you probably are.
Well, look, Steve, I want to say thank you very much for coming in. Let's hope that mood music around your prospective projects in the North Sea and investment, let's hope that wind continues to shift, as it were, in the right direction.
I'm counting on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, this is really interesting. This is the What the Farage moment. I don't normally say that things that happen in the European Parliament are so special that you have to see them. But yesterday, there was a COVID-19 inquiry, and a Dutch MEP asked a question of a representative from Pfizer. I want you to listen carefully to every word.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about Stop and Humanization before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market. And from that point of view, we had to do everything at risk.
Well, I have to say, well done to the MEP, the Dutch MEP, Mr. Roos. That was a brilliant question, and the answer tells me all I need to know. We were lied to. We were told, get jab 1, get jab 2, get the booster, keep being jabbed, because when you're jabbed, you stop onward transmission of the virus. And yet, there's the truth from Pfizer. Pfizer hadn't even tested that. That, I think, is pretty disgusting. In fact, actually, I'm so annoyed, it's time for Talking Pints. In a moment, with Paul Staines, aka Guido Fawkes.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It's time for Talking Pints, and tonight's guest is somebody who I've got to tell you, I have shared a few pints with before in various Westminster establishments. His name is Paul Staines. Paul, welcome to Talking Pints. Good to see you. Now, Paul Staines, but actually, it's Guido Fawkes, isn't it?
Well, that's what we're known for. But
that's what you're known for. I mean, you are Paul Staines.
Yeah.
In reality.
I answer to both names, but I try to keep it a separate identity to myself, you know, but a lot of people do call me by Guido.
Now, we have a tradition in this country going back centuries, and I think we do it better than almost anybody else. We were, in the 18th century, cartooning people, lampooning people, sending messages through cartoons, through writings. We've had, you know, all sorts of radio, TV programmes, Private Eye's been going 60 years. We do satire, we do gossip, don't we, incredibly well?
Yeah, I think all the pamphleteers of old, the 18th century pamphleteers in the city coffee shops were spreading gossip and rumour. Hopefully some of it true, some of it scandalous. But it had a market, and that's what I found out very quickly. I mean, I started in 2004.
Yeah. What was the inspiration that made you launch this site?
OK, so I had been working in fund management, started out in the city, and had a career that was great fun and profitable. And then I got into litigation with my backer for 2 years. And whilst I was twiddling my thumbs, I thought I'd have a go at this blogging thing, which...
and the internet was still relatively new.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook hadn't happened yet. Twitter was 4 years away at that time. So it all preceded that. I didn't know how to do it, but somebody I knew said, oh, you just go on here, get this bit of software. I had to go. For the first, you know, few months, it was just probably the only people reading it were me and a couple of my friends. And then it slowly grew, and by about 2005, we had a front page story that hit all the 2005 election, Michael Howard versus the machine of New Labour at that time. And I had a story that was picked up by the Evening Standard and hit all the front pages. And then as you get more and more scoops, the audience grows until now, you know, we measure our traffic in millions. I mean, we have a bigger traffic than a lot of political magazines. I think the New Statesman would kill to have our audience.
No, I mean, Guido Fawkes is a very well-established, very successful site.
18 years is a long time to be
No, it is.
doing.
And as somebody that's been written about in it more than once, you know, sometimes you like what you guys write, other times you don't like it, but that's the rough with the smooth.
A lot of professional politicians take it quite well. Sometimes I go to a party and I forget. Someone's giving me dagger eyes, and I haven't written the story. One of the staff, one of our reporters has written the story. And what have we done? And I have to sort of Google my own site to find out what we've done to this person that makes them so angry.
Are you a gossip site or a news site?
Well, today's gossip is often tomorrow's news. And things that are rumours do turn out to be factual
Sometimes.
in the end.
Come on,
well,
sometimes.
Look, we are, as I explained to Lord Leveson,
we're going to come to that.
Leveson inquiry. If you go to Reuters and they're talking about whether interest rates have just gone up, that's a big news story has to be checked out 10 different ways. If we're talking about whether someone has got drunk in a bar, we're going to go with maybe one source. If it's career ending, I'm going to want to stand it up very carefully. But, rumours, and we're never wrong for long.
Well, you say that, but, if you're not absolutely certain of the veracity of a story, you'll write it in such a way that you're not going to be subject to legal action. I mean, let's be honest about it.
Yes, and I've gone to a lot of trouble to protect myself from litigation. So I base the servers in the United States,
yes,
the First Amendment protections, and I live in Ireland. That's a confusion.
But you still have to be responsible in what you put out.
Yeah, I mean, we do sometimes get taken to court, by rich people, usually. I haven't collected any writs this year, I don't think. First time I can remember.
Well, you must be getting old. You're losing your touch.
Maybe. We have been going downhill since 2004, I think. But we occasionally do. And look, we do have a corrections policy and we do want to get it right. Now, you might not like our interpretation of events, which is more of our opinion about
And that's more political.
Yeah. So that's the views
Because,
of the
you
news.
yourself, you were a member of the Federation of Conservative Students, which was so right-wing that Norman... I think John Bercow was in it back in those days.
I've known John Bercow for a very long time.
Yeah.
And the longer you know him, the less you like him. Everyone goes on about how I was in
Lord
FCS.
Tebbit closed it down. It was too right-wing.
It's true, but a couple of years later, I was in the SDP. So I wasn't... I'm of the right. I like to think of centre-right. So I'm always a bit bemused when people think just because I like free enterprise and low taxes that I've got leather suits in the drawer. So no, I don't see us as that far out from the mainstream.
Brexiteer?
Yes, we lent into Brexit very hard, as you know.
Which was very tough in Westminster.
It was, but there was all my friends, were of that ilk. I think our editorial line in those days, I remember going to the Sun editor and when they were giving us a column, and they were less warm in those days towards Brexit, I think. And I said, look, we're somewhere between UKIP and the Tories in our editorial line. And she said, oh, that's where we are. So she never interfered with our column. We did the column there happily for 3 years.
And you were a Trump doubter?
I was a Trump doubter, and you're going to remind everyone
no, I'd forgotten. I'd completely forgotten the bet we had.
So let me just cut to tell the story because you'll enjoy it too much. So I think I gave you odds.
You did?
I gave you odds. And then when Trump got elected, I gave you a £10,000 cheque.
You did? You did? I won 10 grand off him. That's quite a big bet for me.
Damn, I think my wife might be watching.
I did buy you lunch there.
Yeah, you let me choose the wine, which is very fair.
Which wasn't pretty fair. No, that was a good win for me. Today, explain to people who've never been involved in journalism, they care about politics and they, want to hear about the people that run the country and the good things about them and the bad things about them. How does a Westminster news site, gossip site, how do you get your stories?
Well, one of the greatest investigative tools in journalism is alcohol, and it loosens lips quite a lot. So there are bars in Westminster, and I don't tend to be in there. In fact, I don't have a pass to go on the parliamentary estate. But the reporters work for me. They're around there. They're seen propping up bars, buying people drinks, chatting. They're in the milieu. A lot of the stories and the way Westminster works these days are that SPAD class, the special advisor class.
Yeah.
And they are usually smart boys and girls, 25 to 35, on the first rung in politics. And it's become a fast track ever since, probably since Cameron and Osborne went from special advisor to running the country in, just over a decade. So a lot of very bright people are in that world, and we mix with them. We increasingly mix with the opposition political advisors. They're known as pads in the trade. And that's a resource. I'm old enough and I've been around long enough now that I do talk to cabinet ministers, and I've seen 6 prime ministers. So to my surprise, I'm on first name terms with them, but I don't often text them.
And people also ring you with stories.
People do ring me with stories, and quite often, and we have a phone line, which a lot of websites don't. You can call up and tell us something, and people often call up and say, "You probably know this already, but I heard da 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 da," and that's usually a great story.
Yeah.
And it's often most junior people who have been spoken down to or kicked downwards who give you the best stories?
Now, I'm somebody who was, for a few years, pretty much hated by most of the British media because I stood up against the political class. I had a point of view that wasn't popular. And my goodness me, I know what it's like when the full wrath of the press. I mean, for many years, not a single national newspaper supported me in any way at all. And I saw the Leveson inquiry hoving into view. And you gave testimony there, didn't you?
I did.
You see, I think, and it's interesting, I personally think that Leveson has made life for public figures more livable, more acceptable, a bit less fearful for their families. But we had a former Sunday Red Top editor sitting in your chair a few weeks ago who said, Nigel, that building over there, we don't get any sex scandals anymore. We don't get anything like the financial scandals we used to get. Do you think it's not happening anymore? Where do you fall on the way Leveson...
Well, I think... So my view about character of politicians is important, and that if they are, the old-fashioned view, they're lying to their wives, they're more likely to lie to the voters. Now, that might be an unfortunate truth, but I think it is a truth. So when people are presenting themselves in one way and they're acting another, I think that's interesting. Nowadays, you have to have...
Tough to publish that stuff now.
Nowadays, because of Leveson, and the newspapers are reluctant to do it, and MPs go to law quite quickly nowadays, you have to have often a security angle, or it has to be irrelevant to...
the public interest.
Public interest. So, for instance, I hate to bring his name up, but there was an MP sending out nude pictures. That was the last one of those type of stories I think we did.
I remember.
But he was a Minister of the Crown, and he was a security risk if he's sending out naked pictures to people he'd only met online. So, yeah, that kind of story still happens.
OK, is the balance right? Has Leveson got the balance for public figures, whether they're politicians or footballers and the press? Have we got it right?
I think it's good that the families, children are protected to some extent. I mean,
because before it was becoming a free-for-all.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. But if you choose to go into public life, and I include the Beckhams in this, by the way, if you choose to go into public life, it is part and parcel. You don't deserve all the abuse you get on Twitter, but that is the way the world is. If you choose to go into public life, then you should expect public scrutiny.
No, I get that. It's about the balance. Now, over the years, the big stories that you've broken, the Gordon Brown stories, what are the highlights of Guido Fawkes, highlights of your career in terms of stories that you've broken and the effect they've had?
I always forget the stories when I'm asked these ones. I think that Damien McBride trying to organise smears, Smeargate as it was called, was probably one of the most consequential stories. We had the Prime Minister's advisor had to resign. Gordon Brown was shown to be devious and willing to employ, a pretty unsavoury henchman. And I remember a call coming from a special advisor to George Osborne calling up and saying, you've moved the polls 5 points in a week. Because, Gordon Brown's moral compass was out the window. And it just showed the public that it was the time when the Tories first broke through 40 points on the polls.
Yeah.
That was pretty consequential. I think a lot of the public service stuff we've done on MPs' expenses on those fiddles, people went to jail, deservedly so, that kind of stuff. And we've started to do more corruption stories and hypocrisy stories in the media. We're actually now turning the spotlight on the media, and they do not like that. The thinnest-skinned people are journalists.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I've seen that. And through the Paul Staines, Guido Fawkes stable, you've trained all these youngsters and sent them out, and you've got the political editor of the Sun newspaper and people in number 10 Downing Street, and that must fill you with a certain sense of satisfaction.
It's good to see. They were all talented people. I mean, I was lucky to have them. Harry Cole worked for me for 6 years. It's annoying because he thinks like me and he's got all my contacts and he's just more charming than I am. So he's done a really good job. He's obviously one of the most powerful positions in political journalism. But, there's Juliet Samuels at The Telegraph, very strong columnist.
Great writer.
There's a lot of special advisors in government who thought that their career would be ruined working for me and they'd never get into government. But it shows how poachers can become gamekeepers and vice versa quite easily.
And 12 years of Conservative government, they're going into opposition, aren't they?
I can't recall a government or a leadership doing this badly going on to win. There are no rules in politics, though, as Tony Blair said, but I think the public has formed a view, and it will be very difficult, even if they get the growth. And I have a hunch that with tax cuts, if they push them through, they will get the growth. But no incumbent government during a period of high inflation is forgiven by the electorate. Doesn't matter if it's left or right, high inflation eras see changes of government.
Paul Staines, keep doing what you do. Thank you. And thank you for joining me on Talking Pads.
Cheers.
OK, it's time for Barrage the Farage. What do we have this evening? Trevor asks, has Truss signed the UK into the EU army without parliamentary debate? There's been no debate at all. And, you know, when we say EU army, well, of course, it's PESCO. It's cooperation. Gerald Howarth was unsure earlier on tonight exactly what she'd signed up to. Ben Habib thought we'd gone the whole way. We don't quite know the truth of what she signed up to. Paul, is Truss going soft on Europe, or...?
I think she's making friends in Europe and trying to be a bit more conciliatory towards them. I don't think we need anything beyond NATO. NATO's worked for 50 years.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree... 70 years.
70, sorry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, this is the EU itself wanted to be a global superpower in its own blooming right. Robbo asks, the women's Irish football team sang IRA songs after beating Scotland. What does that tell us about the UK? Well, Ireland is not part of the United Kingdom, so I'm not quite sure I see the relevance of that. And generally, what I would say is that relations between Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and the United Kingdom are a damn sight better now than they were 25 years ago. You live in Ireland.
Well, I think something I've noticed of late is everybody under 30 seems to like they're going to vote for Sinn Féin. So I don't think those girls, they're all quite young, I don't think they really realised and they've apologised, by the way. They didn't really realise just how it was a chant.
Yeah. All right. We'll forgive them. Now, I'm asked now by Laura, where did you go for 2 weeks? I went to Australia. I was doing a political speaking tour in Australia, but, if I'm being honest, also having a huge amount of fun and a bit of a holiday there. And it was the first proper hole I've had this year. But I'm back, and we're busy, back campaigning, doing what we do, getting great guests, and hopefully waking people up to stories that others ignore. I'll be back again tomorrow night here at 7 o'clock, but right now, I'm handing you over to Mark Stein.
Hey, thanks, Nigel. Great show. And that point that Paul made about everybody under 30 voting for Sinn Féin, there's an interesting show to be done on the difference in how the Shinners market themselves south of the border versus how they sell themselves north of the border. We might get to that one day. We have a terrific show for you tonight. A lot of big topics: the tanking economy, fact-checking, free speech, PayPal freezing your bank account, all kinds of stuff. It's a jam-packed hour, and it starts right after the weather.
Good evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Tomorrow looking pretty good for most places. If you're after dry and bright October fare, it will be fairly damp and misty across much of the south. And some more wet and windy weather will be arriving in the far northwest, courtesy of these weather fronts arriving from the Atlantic. This one is currently with us, and it's just slowly dribbling its way southwards, and it will bring more cloud and drizzly rain across parts of southern England and South Wales overnight. A few showers elsewhere, but much of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England will eventually turn dry and clear. And with light winds here, it's going to turn quite cold. Temperatures even in urban areas down to 3 or 4 degrees Celsius. So in the countryside, there will be some pockets of frost, but we're well above freezing in the far south. But it will be quite a grey, misty, murky start for much of the Midlands, southern England and South Wales. I think along the south coast of England, it'll stay fairly cloudy for much of the day, with likely to see further outbreaks of rain just running from west to east. So a bit damp and drizzly here. But as I said, for many places, dry and a bright day with some sunshine. It will turn